of us have thought about it at some point in our lives. Abandoning civilization and living carefree on a desert island. Finding a fortune and treasure. Well, boy, do I have an island for you. 8 of them, in fact. 600 acres of freehold. Well, technically it's an atoll, but it comes with quiet neighbours. That's because the nearest one is 900 kilometres away. The lagoon, well, that can double as a pool. You'll also get used to the sharks. Robert Louis Stevenson's wife dubbed it the most romantic island in the world. What's more, there's been not just 1, but 3 discoveries of treasure. And Kiwis don't even need a visa or to exchange New Zealand dollars. That place is Suwarrow, and you're looking at it. Did I mention the native rat problem? Its status as a wildlife park? Your need for a permit to step onto land? Honestly, the 2 rangers there probably aren't going to be too enamoured with the population increase and letting you recharge your metal detector. Before you go adding a yacht to your watch list, fighting off people at the supermarket suffering from paranoid neurosis in order to provision a year's supply of toilet paper and baked beans, you probably need to look at this map first. Yep, it's literally in the middle of nowhere. Think Pitcairn, without an uncle sleeping with your younger sister and paying unwanted attention to the pets. I know that name, Suwarrow, sounds awfully exotic. You'd be way off the mark, however, in saying it was Polynesian. The island or island group were named after a Russian general by the navigator of a Russian vessel who stopped by in 1814. And the original name was Suwarrow. Only the British decided at some point to rename it Suwarrow to make it more English sounding. The islands have been under the nominal control of the New Zealand government since 1889, following the visit of this mighty New Zealand vessel, the Rapid. Annexation is probably a closer term. No, I haven't photoshopped them. At one point our Navy had guns on their vessels. For most of its existence, human occupation has been fleeting. The peak of nettlesome humans was between 1903 and 1914, when Lever Brothers, the company that makes Sunlight soap, Vim and Breeze detergent, mined for guano. 3 dozen men were ferreting around the islands at their peak. The first English explorations for guano in the vicinity didn't end up too well for one Captain Shave. He ended up being a Robinson Crusoe on Suwarrow for 20 months in 1873. The best-known residents both wrote books about their time on the island. The first of those was Robert Frisbee, who wrote about his time there with the US Coast Watchers in World War II, as well as his time he spent in Samoa and Tahiti in a book called Island of Desire. No, not that book. The subject matter is rather close for comfort. This one. A quick skim read provides a rather euthanized version of his exploit. Doesn't seem to focus a lot about his exploits with the native girls prior to settling down with a 16-year-old Rarotongan lass. One of their 5 kids, by the way, ended up on Selwyn Toogood's show. Frisbee's genes are all over Polynesia. Let me preempt your Google search. Neither he nor his relatives invented the Frisbee. That was a bloke called Morrison. One of the things the US military were great at was producing stuff. 5 tanks per soldier, that sort of thing. Suwarrow was a little different. When they packed up at the end of the war, they left a number of significant buildings and a water tank. These greatly benefited the next and most famous resident, Tom Neal. Timaru-born Neil was a well-travelled person around Polynesia when he decided that out of all the places he'd visited and worked in, the now deserted Suwarrow was the place for him to be. His first stint on the island was in 1952, aged 50. That almost ended in death when his back gave out and he was fortuitously rescued. Most of his time was spent ridding the island of pests in the form of pigs, then planting gardens and refurbishing the old American facilities. Back in the mainland of Rarotonga, he got married and had 2 kids. These, by the way, were his 5th and 6th, the ones that we know about. He had some up in Tahiti, by the way. I tell you, these self-imposed celibates more than make up for lost time. Either that, or it says a lot about eating fish daily. His second sojourn began in 1960 and ended in 1963 out of sheer loneliness. His only direct contacts with the planet being the infrequent stopovers by yachties. Neil was totally self-sufficient. He had his routine down pat: chickens to kill and eat, fish to catch, fruit to eat. Was a fit-looking rooster for his late 50s when this photo was taken. It was after his second stint he wrote his best-selling book, An Island to Oneself. The Cook government weren't overly keen on Neil making this a habit, but go he did again, for the 3rd time. His final and longest stay started at the ripe old age of 65 and ended 10 years later because of worsening health. That turned out to be stomach cancer, and he sought treatment from Milan Brick, a charlatan doctor who had been exposed in New Zealand and set a clinic up in the Cooks. Brick is or was a despicable human who preyed on the vulnerable. As you'll see from the attached, I've done a video about this prick and the link is in the description below. Neil died less than a year later after beginning his so-called treatment. Now for the bit you've been patiently waiting for, the loot. Before I get into the meaty bit, I will try and rate each find as to their credibility. By 1850, Suwarrow had been the site of a number of wrecks, the most notable being the American whaler which failed to live up to its name, the Gem. No one died in the sinking and the crew was rescued in short order. The vessel still had its lucrative load of whale oil on board, and a salvage mission was launched in 1852 from Tahiti to retrieve what they could, led by an American, Captain Livingston Evans. Evans also went for a fossick around the islands and struck gold, literally. Just metres from the beach he found a fortune in Mexican and Spanish coins. And I mean a fortune. In modern day terms, my maths indicates around 17 million US dollars worth, which Livingston kept all to himself, and as soon as he got back to Tahiti, he hightailed it back to the US. The credibility of this chronicle? We know for sure Livingston did find some coins, so this one floats. If you were looking for a treasure map, what better source than a drunk in a bar? Only this is what apparently happened in the case of Lance Barrett in Tahiti. He was sold a treasure map by a fellow drunken Englishman who said he knew of the site of not just one, but 2 spots on Suwarrow. Barrett was a South Seas trader and he sailed past the islands regularly, and he thought next time he passed he would have a go, and so he did. Far from being the imaginative doodlings of a Dero, the map was highly accurate, down to the exact tree the first cache was buried under. Thereunder, Barrett located the modern equivalent of about $3 million in Spanish and Mexican coins. Search he did for the second site, nothing turned up, but the map proved to be the best £5 he ever spent in his life. The validity? The story has other versions. The finder was a German, and the bar was in Samoa. Could there be a grain of truth? Possibly. I'll give it 3 out of 10. Number 3 has a strong Kiwi connection, and the treasure plays second fiddle to the backstory. That would be worthy of a video in itself. First character here was Handley Bathurst Sterndale, and when I say character, I mean character. Sterndale kicked around with the notorious pirate Bully Hayes, and never went anywhere without his pet poodle, and wrote about his adventures, which were serialised and lapped up by the readers throughout the world, including New Zealand. He sold a scheme to New Zealand investors to set Suwarrow up as a trading post which he would run, and that got the green light from the government as well. The island was leased to an Auckland company called A.B. Donald. Off he trotted to the island in 1877, where he announced himself king, and built a mini fortress and mounted 3 cannons on the shore to ward off any prospective pirates. When the venture floundered due to lack of clientele, the Auckland company sent an armed schooner called the Rhino to give Sterndale the arse. It was led by Captain Fernandez along with Henry Mair, who as soon as they were in the range of the island soon found themselves under barrage of cannon and rifle fire, which they duly returned. The intermittent warfare went on for 2 whole weeks. Sterndale and his native troop versus Fernandez's schooner and their crew. Mair wanted to negotiate with Sterndale, and so he bravely swam ashore under the cover of darkness. As he fumbled around on the dark beach, the half-naked Mair came across a box, and inside he found coins and jewellery. Helping himself to what meagre pickings he could shove into his pockets, he reburied the box and staunchly went on to negotiate with Sterndale. The jewellery and the coins proved to be the clincher. All that cannon fire was a mere communication issue. Light up the barbie and open a few cold ones. Sterndale and Mair were instantly now best buddies, partners in recovering the treasure. Only they both died shortly afterwards. Sterndale got crook in San Francisco and died on Christmas Day 1878, facing a court date in New Zealand whereby shareholders had begun taking legal action to recover their losses. And a native in New Hebrides bashed Mair's skull in with a club. We only know about this story because Mair told his brother about it, fearing Sterndale wasn't the shearing type. The kicker here is Mair turned up back in Auckland with what he had in his pockets, including a silver piece of 8 dated 1778. Another almost identical piece dated 1776 turned up in Apia in the 1920s, and that was said to have been part of the box Mair left behind. Rating 5 from 10. As mentioned at the beginning, you now need a permit to even get on shore. In 1936, however, New Zealand author James Cowan penned this book. This instantly sparked a well-organised search of the islands in 1938. Nothing in terms of treasure was found, but interestingly, some German militaria was. There we have it. There was treasure there at some stage in the past. As to the quantity or origins, like a stray vessel from Peru or one beating a track to the Philippines, that has yet to be qualified. In an interesting twist to Sterndale's time as king of the islands, he turned up muskets, a skeleton, and evidence of European occupation that well predates the Suwarrow. He also had to evict a lone Chinese pearl fisherman who seemed to have arrived there out of nowhere. Some stories, such as this one, are best left as they are, one feels. This is certainly one of them. Help grow this channel, please, and preserve New Zealand history by liking and subscribing. I will spot you next time. Bye for now.